All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll give it another minute or so as it looks like people are still filtering in. Hopefully everyone's doing well. It's been a crazy last week. Hopefully everyone had a good 4th of July as well. Great to see a lot of familiar faces, many new names. Also, one thing I'll note, you should have access to a poll. Really hoping to get a good understanding of what brought you to the webinar today, what you're hoping to get out of it. All right, there we go. Getting some votes coming in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Looks like from the early votes that are coming in, majority are here for all of the above, largely for the macro energy market implications and tax credit implications on projects. So, pleasure to join you all today. Super excited to be here. I know that everybody here on this webinar has a deep desire to get energy projects done. And by way of introduction, my name is Dan Roberts. I am one of the co-founders here at VECKTA, and I lead go-to-market. I'm also the co-host along with our CEO, Gareth Evans, of the Renewable Rides podcast. And I've spent my career in enterprise software companies across a variety of industries. I think one thing that's worth noting, I grew up in a rather rural area of Northern California in Mendocino County, a very wildfire-stricken area of the country. And it's been a big part of my why and a driver for me in helping drive this energy transition. So a little bit about VECKTA. We're a platform to support companies with large real estate portfolios to strategically plan, configure, buy, and scale up on-site energy deployment programs. And we do this through great technology and a great team supporting customers. So first, I want to take everyone back to the year 2000 to jog your memory. The top songs during the time were Breathe by Faith Hill, Smooth by Santana, and Say My Name by Destiny's Child. And early in that year was the tech bubble, and really it was nearing its peak. So in March of 2000, the NASDAQ reached its peak. And at that time, Amazon, in retrospect, was just a fledgling of a company, just gone public in 1997. And I guess at the time, nobody knew what Amazon would turn into that we know today. And so really from the turn of the millennium through to mid 2001, you'll see here that Amazon lost over 90% of its market cap. And this was a very, very challenging time in the tech space in particular. Yet it was a period of time that defined Amazon as the company that we know today. And during that time, specifically from 2000 through 2005, the decisions that were made really shaped the company and took it from at the trough of the tech bubble, about a $2.2 billion market cap and valuation in September of 2001 to today. I just checked yesterday, a market cap of over $2.3 trillion. That's over 1,000x growth, which is absolutely staggering. And so during the early 2000s, Jeff Bezos and his team made two decisions that really changed the course of the company. First, they made the decision to make logistics a core competency of the company rather than outsource it to third-party logistics providers, really like its rival, eBay. eBay never really built out the logistics infrastructure. And today, as of yesterday, eBay was worth about $34.7 billion. which means that Amazon's about nearly 70 times more valuable. The other big decision that they made was to create the world's leading digital infrastructure. And I think these are really important considerations because at that time there was a ton of chaos in the technology space, and Amazon made the decisions to invest in infrastructure. And fast forward to today, uh, really, AWS or Amazon Web Services owns nearly as much market share as the next closest to Google and Microsoft combined. And really on the logistics side of things, rivals the largest global package delivery companies. And you can see here all the different places that Amazon plays. And so when we think back to this period of time, and why I'm even bringing it up today is that the 2000 tech bubble for Amazon may have felt a bit like 2025 has felt for many of you here in this webinar. Yet the number one thing that they focused on and that we should be focusing on is to be able to control the controllables in our business. And um, and so really many of the critical business inputs. Um, excuse me. Did I messed up my screen sharing here. Am I still sharing my screen? Sarah, can you give me a heads up? We can't see the presentation. Um, you haven't been able to see this presentation the whole time. That's my guess. Well done, Dan. Here we go. Apologies there. Thank you, Sarah. Minor technical difficulty. So, uh, really, like, why do I bring this up? The 2000 tech bubble for Amazon may have felt a bit like 2025 does for all of you here on this call. Yet, really, we control the controllables, and so many of the critical business inputs cannot be controlled. If you're an auto parts manufacturer, you cannot control the price of steel, and nor can you easily spin up a steel mill. And if you're a food producer, you can't control the price of wheat and not easily buy up a bunch of farms and produce your own wheat. However, you can control the electrons that flow into your business. And electricity, as we all know, is one of the most critical inputs to businesses. And the market is changing seemingly daily, potentially even hourly. And this is where chaos breeds opportunity. So what are we going to cover today? Today, we're going to go through the business case drivers that really drive on-site energy systems, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and the details as it relates to on-site energy systems, the business case impacts on these systems of these market changes, and then how to act strategically. So let's jump right in. From a business case driver perspective, I think it's important to note that I think there's a lot of folks that think that the primary driver is incentives, and while they do have an outsized impact on utility scale projects, and prior to 2020, it was mostly true for commercial and industrial. However, things have changed, and that's different today. The other thing, while I won't be able to hit on all of the aspects that I cover here on this slide, it is worth noting that soft costs, NREL did a study several years ago that found that 30 to 70% of the costs of an on-site energy system are soft costs. And this is everything that's not equipment, labor, or financing costs. And we really see the compression of these soft costs as one of the key paths to making up for losing any of the tax credits. So let's dig into the utility tariffs a bit further. So really, the last 4 years, we've seen a very different world than we did prior to that. As you'll see on this graph on the left, the time period from 2016 to 2020 was one in which the cost of power did not go up much. In fact, in industrials, it came down over that time period a fraction of a percent. Yet from 2020 to 2024, we saw a dramatic spike. And this is largely due not to the cost of producing electrons, it's through the cost to deliver, both through our transmission system as well as our distribution system and the hardening of that grid. And so um, uh, the what that's really driving is we're seeing a tremendous spike in energy costs, and this is not isolated to the usual suspects like California or New York. You'll see in Nevada, Georgia, we're seeing some very very large spikes as well. And not to mention that on top of that, recently the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the grid a D plus rating, and so this is just going to continue to present more and more challenges. Um, this is now really, bringing in a new energy era, and so we're seeing demand spike. There's going to be a supply squeeze, and while the one big beautiful act is aimed directly at renewables, we can't overlook that 4% of new capacity that came from natural gas. Only 4% came from natural gas in 2024, and we currently have a 5 to 7 year backlog on new gas turbines. It's also worth noting that a Reuters report back in May of 2022 highlighted that, according to the DOE, the average age of large grid transformers, which handle roughly 90% of the US electricity flow, is more than 40 years old. Yet, according to Swiss Re, transformer malfunctions tend to escalate around that 40-year mark. Now let's juxtapose that average lifespan against the life expectancy. The American National Standards Institute found that when a transformer is operating under its basic load conditions, its normal life expectancy is about 20 to 30 years. This presents a major challenge on our grid, and our grid operators and utilities have a lot of deferred maintenance to catch up on here. And so linking this back to the Amazon story that I shared at the beginning, there's never been a better time to already own your own energy infrastructure. And if you wish you had done it five years ago, the second best time is now. So let's get into the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So first, we're going to hit on the Section 48E provisions. We'll then hit on timelines. We will then hit on some foreign entities of concern provisions, depreciation, and finally close out with a few others, including transferability. So I'll get right into it. As it relates to Section 48E, which is largely the tax credits that are impacting solar and wind, I will say for today, we're really going to focus on solar rather than wind because this session is largely meant for commercial and industrial businesses and on-site energy systems. So what are the changes? So solar projects that begin construction within 1 year of enactment, so between now and July 4th, 2026, will qualify for the tax credits if they are placed in service within 4 years. So if they begin construction within the next year, they have to be placed in service within 4 years. Or projects that begin construction after July 4th, 2026 will have to be placed into service by December 31st, 2027 to qualify for the tax credits. I will say this is, these provisions, especially the begin construction within the next year, were largely put in for the large scale utility scale project developers because many of the projects that they've already been working on likely won't come into service by 2027. However, in the commercial industrial space, we do see timelines much more compressed. And so we really view the key date as the placed in service by 12/31/2027, and really focusing on helping drive action between now and the end of 26 to get those projects contracted, permitted, interconnections complete, and built and PTO. An additional qualifier is that for projects that start construction after December 31st of this year, they must meet material assistance from prohibited foreign entities requirements. And we'll get into that in just a second. The great news, energy storage, largely batteries in this context, tax credits will remain intact as they were outlined in the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is really going to spur more and more battery energy storage projects coming online. So what do we mean by beginning construction and place into service and adhering to those timelines? Historically, to meet IRS conditions, the beginning of construction of a project must pass one of two tests. Either Physical work of significant nature must begin on the project or the components, and continuous construction be required to continue to maintain access to those credits, or a 5% safe harbor, meaning you incur 5% of the cost of the project. However, we had big news with the signing of the bill on Friday, and then another hit on Monday afternoon with the executive order signed by President Trump, or issued by President Trump, stating that or urging the Treasury to provide updated guidance on the 5% safe harbor, and really crack down on that a bit further. We don't have any guidance on that yet. The Treasury was given 45 days, so it is expected that we'll get guidance by August 18th, at which time we'll certainly support our customers in the industry to adhere to those. But I think it's safe to say that for now, it's a good bet to have that we should really focus on the physical work beginning, as far as the definition of beginning construction. As far as placed into service, really it's the date when a qualified facility or energy storage technology is ready and available for its intended use. That's the key definition of placed into service there. So let's move on to FEOCs, or foreign entities of concern. There's really two definitions within this, which is the specified foreign entities and the foreign influenced entities. Largely, this is focused on China. You'll see a handful of nations mentioned there: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. This is largely focused on China because that's where a lot of the equipment's coming out of. And the key provision here, again, I mentioned that any projects that begin construction after December 31st of this year, so unless you're already in the permitting process or contracting and moving through permitting and interconnection, this likely means any project that is net new moving forward must adhere to the material assistance cost ratio. For now, that guidance is that which is given by the domestic content guidance that was issued by the IRA. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act did identify that by December 31st, 2026, there will need to be new guidance issued, and that for now, use the existing guidance. And really what that means is that for any projects that begin construction in 2026, they need to have more than 40% of for solar and 55% for storage needs to come from non-prohibited foreign entities. And I spoke to several developers over the last couple of days that are in our marketplace, and they've actually already been adhering to these. So they've been focusing on the domestic content. So this is materials that are actually coming from here in the U.S. This we'll see how this all plays out, but the way that the act is written, it's really focused on just making sure that the components are not coming out of a prohibited foreign entity or out of China. Doesn't necessarily say it has to come out of the U.S. So we're starting to see some supply chain shifting, and a lot of the big companies have started to develop their supply chains over the last couple of years. But the developers that I talk to are largely getting their racking, their inverters, their switch gear all out of the U.S. And even one I spoke with said that they get their panels. The panels are built in China, yet the junction boxes are in the U.S. and that helps take it over the line. And all of that together, along with the steel for say carport racking and others, brings them to that 45 plus percent mark, which will meet these guidelines moving forward, assuming that they don't become more stringent when we do get further guidance. So let's move on to bonus depreciation. I think this is a really shining light in the whole bill, which brings forward or reinstates the 100% bonus depreciation, meaning that you can depreciate 100% of the asset in year one. We were in the phase down period from the Inflation Reduction Act on the accelerated depreciation. We were sitting at 40% this year. It was set to step down to 20% next year, and then to zero after that. This now brings it back to 100% in year one, which actually does save some of the economics. And when we get into the analysis, we'll see how that plays out. Some of the additional provisions that are worth noting here is that for non-wind and solar zero emission projects, so it specifically names geothermal, nuclear, hydrogen, fuel cells. The IRA phase out is what's going to continue to hold true. They're not introducing any nearer term phase outs. Transferability remains, which is a really important bit, as long as it's not involving a foreign entity of concern. And then a few others to note: commercial clean vehicle credit ends after September 30th of this year, and the commercial charging credit 30C is available through September 30th of 2026. So we did put this together in a bit of a timeline so you can start to visualize what this looks like. So again, here between now and the end of the year, any projects that go into construction are not subject to the prohibited foreign entity restrictions. Anytime after, they will be subject to them. And after July 4th, 2026, the projects must be put into service by December 31st, 2027. And again, the bonus depreciation will continue forward. There's no guidance on any phase out of that bonus depreciation, which is great. On the storage side of things, again, any projects that are put into construction between now and 2026 are not required to meet any sort of prohibited foreign entity material assistance cost ratios. And then thereafter, you will see that, and you will get the tax credits again for projects that go into construction through the end of 2033, excuse me, and then we'll start to see a step down thereafter. So how is this going to impact our projects? We've completed an analysis, and really we've done 2 levels of analysis. We've looked at, actually, excuse me, we did have a second poll that we wanted to put out there. Sarah, you might be able to publish this poll. Looks like you have, and we're already starting to get some results. Beautiful. If everybody can take a minute, fill out the poll. Let me get a little water. Great. Well, it looks like no available capital or competing budget priorities is sitting at the top here, followed by internal complexity, really engaging a lot of stakeholders. We see that being a challenge for a lot of different companies, and then a perception problem. Interesting. I see that, and I think there's a lot of confusion and chaos in the market, especially following the passing of this act, and that I really appreciate everyone filling this out. Yeah, internal complexity stepping up again along no available capital. I think it is worth noting on the no available capital side, there are many different commercial models that don't necessarily require any capital down and can still bring down your overall operating costs, especially given the rising utility rates. So let's dive into the analysis. We really looked across individual sites and the impacts of these changes on individual sites, as well as a portfolio-wide impact. And we looked across kind of 3 different industry segments: a supermarket, a cold chain logistics, and manufacturing. And so let's dive into what some of the findings are here. Really, there's a lot to consume here, and I'd say the key takeaways for comparison's sake is I'm looking across the same system in the first 3 columns of pre One Big Beautiful Bill Act, today, and then post 2027, and then lastly looking at an optimized system, which really what we're seeing across these 3 different facilities is that in an optimized environment, it brings down the solar sizing anywhere between 8 and 12%, and maintains the battery energy storage sizing. So pre One Big Beautiful Bill Act was tax credits as outlined, along with the accelerated depreciation on the schedule of 40% bonus this year, and then and then a 5-year schedule. Today being, let's say, a project that you get done in the next between now and the end of 2027, where you get full tax credits along with accelerated depreciation. And then finally, post 2027, the solar tax credits go away. You maintain the battery energy storage tax credits, and you still get the accelerated depreciation. And I think the biggest takeaways are that in the near term, project economics actually get better, and that's really largely due to maintaining of the tax credits and getting the depreciation up front. And then as we move into 2028 and beyond, both in a non-optimized scenario, so taking a carbon copy of these solar and battery energy storage system sizing, and certainly in an optimized scenario, we're seeing that the increases in utility costs. We did use a 4% annual utility rate escalation. We've seen over the last several years over 5% on average across the U.S. and as high as 15% or more here in California, where I sit. But due to the utility cost increases, the equipment price reductions, and the ability to compress soft costs, the impact of solar tax credits going away is largely minimized. You will see that there are certainly projects, for example, the cold chain in Nevada, where it does go from an attractive project to one that may struggle to get internal approval. But I think the news is positive in that there are still many great projects, even once the ramifications of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act come into play, and the short-term economics from a depreciation perspective actually improve. So again, going back to my comment earlier, if you wish you had a project 5 years ago, that was the best time. Today would be the second best time. So, or arguably with accelerated depreciation, maybe it's a better time. So when we look across a portfolio, really we can absorb a lot of those impacts. And what you're seeing here is the supermarket chain across 27 states, cold chain across 37, manufacturing across 28, varying sizes of portfolios under consideration here. But all of them we considered up to a 10 projects per year for a 25-year rollout strategy, assuming that each project has a 25-year life. This takes it out to like a 50-year view. And when we look across the portfolio, we've got net present value and the number of negative cash flow years. On the right hand side, you'll see how VECKTA strategy really drives a lot of the analytics. And as the market changes or as internal needs change, I think there was a lot of folks that mentioned that internal complexity. In fact, on the poll, internal complexity has actually risen to the top beyond not available capital. Being able to navigate that internal complexity and manipulate your strategy based on market conditions and internal needs becomes really important. So across supermarket and cold chain logistics, you see that the kind of the overall impact is largely unchanged. Yet in manufacturing, it was a 29% reduction on the net present value when we fast forward over the next many years. A couple of reasons for the maybe less than expected impact across a whole portfolio. One, the investment tax credits were already planning to get sunset eventually as it is. Yes, it's now sooner for solar. It maintains the same for storage. But that was already part of the calculus when looking at building a program and rolling this out across a portfolio. The depreciation value, as I've stated before, really is much better today. It was sitting at 40% this year. It's now back up to the 100% mark, and the cash flows naturally improve with depreciation being 100% in year one, as opposed to being distributed over 6 or 8 years in the 5 and 7 year schedules respectively. And so in this case, the VECKTA strategy was able to optimize the order of sites to maximize the portfolio-wide rollout and the economics associated with that. So really, what can we do? How should we react in this particular period of time? I think there's a lot in this chaos that you have a knee-jerk reaction, and it may create some traps. So a few things to look out for. Really, first and foremost, we encourage everybody to gain internal alignment quickly. Again, I think that's I want to underscore that, given the responses to the poll of internal complexity and perception problem being right up there as some of the challenges that you folks are facing. It often requires a wide variety of intelligence across many different stakeholders to get that alignment. But it needs to be done quickly in order to capitalize on the near-term opportunity and then build the strategy for long-term rollout. Optimize to current market conditions. Again, this seemingly can change daily or sometimes even quicker than that. And so being able to adjust and react to those market conditions is critical. And when you pick a particular project, you need to have confidence in setting course and going and taking action. Driving competition to yield the optimal outcomes across terms, price, and being able to have alternatives is critical, especially as we see there's going to be a rush of folks that are going to be moving into the market to capitalize on these opportunities and looking for partners to deliver that. What you don't want is, as we get closer to 2027, the delivery market may get squeezed, and you don't want to be sitting there getting deprioritized by the sole partner that you've engaged with, and really potentially miss your placed in service window. And so when we think like, what do we need? What can we do now? In the next few weeks, really our recommendation is you should, any projects that you have in flight. So this is, where you might be getting bids, you might be negotiating terms, or you might be executing contracts. Keep them moving forward and keep them moving forward at a brisk pace so that you can free up, attention and resources to focus on the remainder of your portfolio. Develop a rollout strategy. Do that quickly, yet know that you need to remain nimble because if there's anything that we know from this year, change is likely on the horizon. And so you need to develop a strategy, but have one that can flex as the market conditions change, as your capital requirements and investment strategies within your companies change. This is critical. You need to socialize the strategy amongst the broader team and get the feedback both to update and modify and adapt the strategy, but also get the buy-in to take action and move forward and begin making progress. And then really get firm proposals on your top projects and get that process started. And then as far as maximizing the next 2.5 years, really, we see an opportunity to take groups of projects to market, especially if you have many facilities in the same state or same utility territory. You can certainly take individual projects to market, or you could take groups of projects, whether that's 2 or 20 projects at a time, taking them to market, and do so in parallel. You should be able to configure systems, enroll your teams, procure the systems, negotiate and award contracts in under 6 months. And being able to run this process in parallel and rinse and repeat will ensure that you can maximize the timing that we have between now and 2027, and then know that there's going to likely be many projects within the portfolio that can still be resilient to the losing of tax credits, and those are the ones that you can tackle. And really, you don't have to expand any internal teams or get additional resources than what you have. You can do this today. So in closing, I think there's a couple things to note. This is a marathon, and while there may be some fast-paced miles here at this leg of the race, building a portfolio-wide strategy is critical to ensure that you don't fall on your face and have missteps along the way. The market is incredibly dynamic. You should start the planning process now. You should have a dynamic strategy and really get the enrollment to start executing. Don't think solar only. Battery costs are coming down. The tax credits and incentives remain. This will be something that we'll continue to see both the cost drivers, but also we'll see state, local, utility constructs and incentives that are going to continue to drive battery energy storage economics and incentivize the deployment of battery energy storage systems. Ensure your suppliers cover all their bases, especially as it relates to the material cost ratio and the prohibited foreign entities, so that you can capture value. The last thing you want is to get a project deployed and then lose out on the tax credits because that has not been adhered to. And then lastly, just because the solar tax credits are going away doesn't mean the business case for on-site energy is going away with it. We see the market dynamics changing. We see the impacts of the one big beautiful bill continuing to drive up utility costs, which again is the number one driver of the business case of these systems. And so with that, I'll wrap there. Thank you everyone for your time. It's been a whirlwind of I guess 5 days since the actual passing of the bill, or signing of the bill, 6 days since the passing in the Senate. I see that we might be getting some questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat here. So I'll start with one. Let's see, Dan, can you provide more insights into the assumptions made regarding equipment cost decreases, compression of soft costs that contribute to the project IRRs remaining positive in your model? Yeah, so really the equipment costs coming down. We follow the NREL guidance on what the projections are on that in the future, but we see that at least today, going from kind of pre one big beautiful bill world to a one where you need to comply with the prohibited foreign entities and the material cost ratios, remaining unchanged. Again, having spoken to many of the developers, as well as being able to see many of the proposals that are coming through, the costs that are coming through are already reflecting these realities. And we see that again, you can bring down the cost substantially. We're seeing projects that are pressing below, $1.40 a watt in some cases on rooftop, or below $2.50 on carports. And so this is, I think, going to remain unchanged in the near term from an equipment cost perspective, and then come down as panels and battery energy storage systems come down. As far as the soft costs, that's not necessarily reflected in the analysis here, but it is something that we know is going to continue to drive as efficiencies come into the procurement and planning of these systems. Got another question here as far as is the recording available? Yes, everybody that attended the webinar, as well as those that registered before the webinar, will get a recording coming out of this. What sort of terms are you seeing with PPA offerings? That's a very broad question. I think there's a variety of terms that I think might be relevant to touch on. Certainly the length of the term. I think typically you're seeing anywhere between 15 on the low end up to 25, potentially more, but largely 25 years on the length of the term. I think another key component beyond the actual PPA price, the cents per kilowatt hour that's agreed upon, is the escalator. Typically that sits somewhere in the 1% to 3% annual utility rate escalation. We have helped clients get 0% escalators, which in an environment where utility rates are increasing 5 or in some cases 15% annually, a 0% escalator can be extremely helpful when you look across the 25 years of a project. Will the post-2027 ITC change affect PPA providers most? Seems like accelerated depreciation can make up the financials for a direct owner, but for installers, owners who are aggregating incentives across many projects, wondering if this affects them differently. Candidly, Jensen, I haven't necessarily thought through how the ITC changes are going to impact individual PPA providers. I think it's going to help their economics on being able to depreciate everything in year one, so that they can make the early cash flow work. And then as you get into later cash flows and the discounted cash flows associated with that, the impacts aren't as great. So I think that is going to help. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I think really I would think of it more from the buyer's perspective. Certainly tax credits going away will increase the PPA rates that are put out there on the market, but I don't see that increase outpacing the utility rate escalations, and therefore continuing to ensure that the project business case, if you will, remains intact. Are bonus credits still available for solar projects starting construction in 2026 and placed in service by Q4 2027? Excellent question. I meant to touch on that. I assume when you say the bonus, meaning domestic content, energy community, and less so the low income bonus because it's a lottery. It's unclear. And I can't speak to that. I've spoken to many attorneys in the space, and it's unclear on what is going to happen to the bonus tax credit. So I don't want to guess and say something that isn't in fact true. There wasn't any explicit guidance in the act related to the bonuses, so I think time will tell. I think maybe a good practice would be to assume that they don't, and if the project economics are strong, proceed forward and hope for the best, and they'll only get sweeter if they do remain intact. Um, Quick thoughts on the net impact of the bill on energy efficiency projects. I do know, and I'm not as familiar, so I can't comment too much on it. I do know that there's some provisions around write-offs and expanding that for commercial energy efficiency in Section 179D, I believe it is. But I don't know enough about that to really comment intelligently on it. Um, and then should we expect more focus on merchant terms? Um, Not exactly sure what you mean by merchant terms. Beyond maybe terms beyond price. I think yes, that's something that we certainly encourage our clients to do is spend a lot of time not just focusing on price. Price is obviously very important and probably the most important, but there are a wide variety of other terms, especially whether the commentary before on PPAs and some of the terms around that, but also in CapEx projects, being able to ensure that you get um, uh, you know, great warranties and workmanship warranties, and that O&M is involved, and the O&M isn't too onerous, so that you can continue to ensure you get the most out of the system. Can you identify what equipment qualifies for 100% bonus depreciation? The bonus depreciation, to my knowledge, it impacts any qualified facility, which would incorporate solar, battery energy storage, wind. Again, wind is not so much of a focus of this conversation, but it should, the bonus depreciation should carry through for that. Is one okay? Yep, I think I answered that. Any meaningful difference between how the ITC and PTC are treated in the one big beautiful bill? Not really. I'm not like I don't deal in utility scale projects, so I'm not as familiar with the PTC, since the ITC is really the standard in commercial industrial. But from what I've read, ITC and PTC are largely treated the same. So I would encourage you to take a look, but I don't think there's much difference between the two. All right. I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for joining. Like I said, the recording, we will send it out to everyone to consume at a later time. My contact information is here on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions as it relates to the changes, to developing a strategy to deploy systems to get the most out of these systems. It's what we do all day, every day. We live it, we breathe it, we love it. And so thank you everyone for your time, and let's get to work. Take care, everyone.